Next session, before the Q&A session, is focusing a little bit more on the data challenge. And the data challenge is an important one, an often underestimated one, and one where very few companies have the maturity that one of our clients has been building. And this company is called Bekaert. And we will look at how Bekaert tackled the data challenge. They have been pioneering in the way they buy energy, the way they organized their team internally. And it's very interesting to see at which point they are today and how they came to the point where they are today. And for that, I would like to welcome Reinoud Goedezunne on stage. Reinoud, Global Director for Utilities at Bekaert. And together with Reinoud, we will also invite a native from Venezuela who has worked in 3 continents. He worked at ArcelorMittal as an energy engineer, then found out he is in love actually with much more with data, and found the ideal job as a DevOps, the link between the development and the operations at ENC. Bruno.
So thanks for the presentation and good morning, everyone. The way we have structured the presentation today, we are going to start by Reinoud, who will share his personal experience in energy procurement and data management in Bekaert. And then I'm going to take a global overview of the energy data management challenge and some lessons learned here at ENC. So please.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank ENC for the invite and the opportunity to talk a bit about Bekaert and the things we've done. First thing I want to mention is today I have a bit of double hat on. On the one side, energy procurement lead, but also working on decarbonization. So that's one of the things that effectively you just mentioned on those different shells. So that's one of the things we're doing in the company. We're combining the sustainability, the decarbonization goals together with our energy procurement. So today I'm going to talk about basically 2 things. I'm going to start first of all with the energy procurement transition we've gone through, and then secondly on data, how we use data and how we report on data. So first of all, who is Bekaert? Because I assume probably most of you have never heard about Bekaert. So we are a global company. We have roughly 70 sites globally, 24,000 employees. But what are now our products? So we have quite a wide range of products and applications. We serve different industries. One is, for example, the automotive. We make tire cords. So that's cord that is used into the tires to reinforce that. Another example is we serve the construction industry. We have a Dramix offering, which is tiny fibers that you put into concrete to reinforce the concrete. Third one that I can mention, and it's an interesting one here, is we make mooring lines for offshore wind turbines. So that's to anchor offshore wind turbines in sea. And then the last one, and that's probably the product that you all have used, but you've never heard of Bekaert, is, you know the tiny wire when you open a bottle of champagne? Well, that's what we make as well. So energy procurement transition. What do we talk about? If you look at our locations, as I said, we're globally active. We use roughly 4 terawatt hours a year. And we're in different countries. We're globally, so we are in countries which are fully regulated up until fully liberalized markets. So different challenges, I would say, in all these markets. Our main load is in Europe and in Asia, and in particular, that's in China. And the last one, our ratio, electricity to gas, roughly 2:1. Energy procurement. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you a couple of years back before the energy crisis, and the view of our management on energy was quite a bit different than it is today. And why was that? That's definitely related to what you see on the graph. Our energy costs, the percentage of the cost of our energy in our total cost is rather small. So back then there was a vision on, and I'm going to take you through a couple of quotes. First of all, through hedging, we can beat the market. We can buy cheaper than what the market is offering. I think for everyone who is sitting here and is buying energy, we all know that it's not true, and probably wouldn't be sitting here if that would be the case. Secondly, risk is small because prices are steady. Well, if you know what has happened in 22 with the energy crisis, I don't think that's the case. But it also shows, I would say, a lack of knowledge at that moment on the fact, for example, even back then, if you would look on spot prices on an intraday, prices can be very volatile. So the expertise was not there at that level. And then thirdly, procurement of energy is managed locally. So it was not that important, so we'll just do it by quite different people, and it's managed basically by the business themselves. So what does that mean? We didn't have a proper risk management strategy to buy our energy. A lot of different visions on how we should do it, a lot of different people with their own opinions and their own views. So what we did is we basically got the basics right. So first of all, we defined our hedging strategy. And that is something we did together with ENC at that moment. We involved management, finance, procurement, obviously, the business, and we defined a strategy depending on each business, because each business has their own customer base, they have their own sales programs, so a different strategy was needed for each business unit. Secondly, sourcing strategy. Obviously, to do your hedging strategy properly, you need to have the right contracts in place to effectively do your hedges and do your risk management. So we defined how we wanted to source energy. Thirdly, contracts. So we had a legacy of certain contracts which were, some were good, some were, I wouldn't say, the appropriate contracts to do what we want to do. If your strategy is, for example, you want to buy 3 years ahead, you should have contracts that allow you to do these hedges 3 years ahead. And then fourthly, education. So as I said, education was needed. We had a lot of discussions, meetings with different people within the organization to explain now, okay, this is the strategy we're going to do, this is how we're going to source, and explaining how the market is working and how it impacts their factories and so on. And then lastly, organization. And that's something I have a specific slide on. As I said, we had, I would say, a decentralized organization. It was led by different people, a maintenance manager, a plant manager involved, different people working on energy procurement. So we took that away and made it from a decentralized to a centralized organization led by our energy procurement team. This has as a consequence that the right people were doing the people with the right expertise were doing and executing the strategy as we communicated and agreed upon. And it enabled us to do and to implement the right risk management tools. And then lastly, do that proper education and explain and report on how we buy energy in the end. Then, second part I want to highlight is a bit on data. So ENC asked me to show a bit how our flow of data is and how we capture data in the company. So I think it's already been discussed by previous speakers. The complexity of data is increasing. So what we did is, over the course of the last couple of years, is we implemented a way to capture data. Today, that granularity is coming from the invoices, so it's a monthly granularity, and it's combining consumption data coming from those invoices, but it's also production assets. So we have renewable assets, we have PPAs, we have different assets on our factories. So all that kind of data coming from different places, different ways, in different ways, we are combining and we are pushing that into our database. That database is not only, I would say, a pure energy database on volumes and prices, but it's also a CO2 database. So we include the fact if we're buying EECs or if we have a PPA, those certificates coming from these products are also captured in a database. Another thing we do is on commodity prices. So we have internally a way to look at market prices from different commodities. So that's not only energy, it's also market prices of our raw materials and different commodities. And then lastly, that hedge position, the hedged data, is a database of basically our position. How much have we bought, when did we buy it, and at which prices. And combining all these different data sources means that we do have a quite comprehensive overview of our energy procurement. And on top of that, we can calculate all our CO2 emissions out of that. This data, on top of that, we do have Power BI visualizations that is then shared to the management. So if we look at for what we now use our data, I want to distinguish the three, I would say, for us, the most important things is one is risk management, secondly is then budgeting, and lastly is sustainability. So if we start with risk management, and that's related to that hedged position, is we share to the business reports where they basically can retrieve how much they have bought, or how much we have bought on their behalf, and at what prices this come. We link them with that commodity prices, and we can basically calculate their portfolio price. So what we expect them to pay in a particular month, given their position open on the market and the position bought through our hedging strategy. On top of that, we can link that to, for example, what we call contract prices. So these are prices, energy indexations that we have put into contracts, our sales contracts. So we can compare ourselves to these prices. So it gives us quite some insights on how we're performing on strategy and how we're performing versus that spot market, basically. What we then do is we have meetings with the business to talk that through and to get, and for us then, most importantly, their insights on forecasting. How do they expect to consume and how much do they expect to consume? Is there a shift from one factory to another? That's things we need to know to adapt, obviously, our strategy. Do they foresee, for example, summer shutdowns and how long? So these things impact the way you do your strategy or you execute your strategy. Secondly, budgeting. So probably like a lot of companies, we do a yearly budgeting exercise. So we define how much we will pay for our energy at a certain moment in time. Throughout the year then, we have on a quarterly basis, we update those prices. And we define our actuals versus the budget. And again, that's going to our hedge position, taking into the market, and seeing what our volumes are to give back that data towards the business and definitely finance. On top of that, again, these reports were shown through a certain Power BI. And then thirdly, sustainability. I think there is definitely an increased needs and requirements for reporting towards sustainability, different kinds of reports. So we're there to help, obviously, within the annual report. We need to do CDP reporting. We have CSRD coming in next year. So a lot of different requirements that makes us to come up with a lot of data. We need to be able to share volumes. We need to be able to share all those different calculations on CO2. So that's where that database comes in handy, and we can use that to quite easily put in all that data and give it to the business. And then lastly, I would like to make some concluding remarks on, I would say, challenges I think we'll face moving in this, I would say, quite rapidly changing energy market and how you need to deal with data. If you look at data, there is quite a huge amount of data. And that will come at a different data granularity. It's at a lower level of data will be needed, so up to hourly data, and that's the graph that Benedict showed earlier this morning. That's data that we don't have in a structured way at the moment. But for us, that will be needed to do the right analysis to see whether there are new assets or there is a business case for new assets. So that lower granularity will be needed, and that obviously comes with a huge amount of data. Thirdly, data integration. So if you have PPAs, you have on-site assets, you have connection to the grid, all these data flows they're not into one tool that you can just retrieve all your data. No, it's coming from different sources, different ways, and you'll need to have the technical capabilities as a company to integrate and to work with that data, to visualize that data. And then fourthly, that's, I would say, related to that lower granularity again, there will be a need for more advanced analytics to calculate those business cases and to know and to understand your position, considering I have an on-site solar park, I have a virtual PPA somewhere, and I want to do a battery. Does that make sense? There will be software needed to do that. And obviously, related to that, you'll need a more advanced and a different skill set than what I think is needed today within the energy procurement team. So that were my concluding comments, so over to you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Reinhold. Hey, Bruno, how exposed are we? If I was an energy buyer, like most of you are today, this is a question I will get a lot. And this is a question that might come from my CEO, it might come from my sustainability manager, it might come from my operational colleagues. And if I got asked that question, I can easily say, you know what, overall, we are 73% hedged. If you want to take a look per commodity, know that on electricity we are on 76, and on gas on 71. If you want to go in deep with electricity, know that in each country, for example, in Australia, we are fully hedged, while in Belgium and the UK, we're around 80%, and we haven't made any hedges for the States. And if you go deep in Belgium, you should know that all of our sites, we are around 80% hedged. That was an easy answer, because I have the right data and I have the right visualization for it. But as Jens and Benedict told in the morning, now today is more difficult than ever to calculate how much are we hedged, how much are we paying for energy. And that's because we are in the middle of the energy transition. And energy transition means complexity both for energy procurement and also for energy data management. We are going from a scenario with few flows of information, you will be able to answer such questions. But today, for example, in addition of having my traditional invoices, I'm having solar panels in my roof, so I have to integrate this on-site PPA data. I have an energy storage data system, so that is affecting my consumption as well. I have a green strategy in which I buy guarantees of origin, and I need to integrate those costs as well. I'm ingesting market data because I want to do some risk management and also calculate my open costs. And maybe I have signed an off-site PPA invoice, and I need to take that into account as well. On top of that, we are having some macro factors as well that are adding a lot of complexity. Market regulations. Benedict said an example today about energy certificates being calculated by the hour. That means that soon we are going to have an hourly price for gas certificates and maybe even a 15-minute price for electricity certificates. We need to adapt those systems to that kind of granularity as well. Also new technologies. I think a couple of years ago, blockchain was a really trend word that was going to disrupt energy landscape. Maybe it's not the case today, but we have, for example, AI that is helping companies like us to treat information faster. We are having centralization trend. That means that instead of treating the data for one side, you might find yourself with a complete business division to treat. We are having more interest in greening that creates new needs regarding reporting, for example. So the conclusion of all of this is that it's very complex to do energy data management right now. But here at the NC, we have learned some lessons on how to have an effective data management system. And this is what I want to share with you today. So, first lesson that you need to know is that you need to understand the context of your energy data management system. You need to answer who wants to see what. Coming back to the first example, is it my CEO who is asking for data? What data does she want, for example? It's my financial department who's asking data. It's my sustainability manager. So you need to know who wants to see and what, to be aware of the requirements of your system as well. Second intake, where do I get my data from? You have to have a nice map, a nice blueprint of your different data sources. That will give you an idea on the work that you need to do and how complex will be your energy data management system. And third one, you need to make friends. That means that you need to get all the stakeholders on board, because you are going to have people in your organization that has the data, you are going to have people that works that data, and you're going to have people that consumes that data. So having a clear picture of who is who and get everybody to work with you might be a good idea. Second intake, it's about data model, a topic I enjoy a lot. So basically, data model is mainly a simplification of your business reality applied to a specific context. In this case, is the energy procurement. But to have a good data model, you not only have to take into account your data requirements, but you have to include in it also your business structure, that means how the data is organized, and your business process, which means how data relates to each other. If I'm going to put a reporting system for my energy procurement, I might use some invoices and hedge information that is coming by email from my suppliers, for example. My financial controlling team will send me some budgets in Excel file. Then I'm going to have meter data, not only for my plant consumption, but for my solar panels production, for example. And I'm going to have market data as well. This I will need to combine with my business structure. How are we structuring our business? Do we have business units? Do we have different legal entities? Are we working by regions as well? Inside, or even inside a unique site, do I have different meters that are linked to different production lines? I am going to report that way. This you need to take into account for your system. And the second one is business process, which I'm mainly talking here about maybe contracts. Which sites are covered by which contracts? Do I have a specific formula? What's my formula behind my contracts? What are my variables in it? I am in a same site, I'm producing four days per week to a specific business unit, and then the last day to another. All of this you need to take into account to have a good data model. And I say good because all models are wrong, but some are useful. Sadly, I don't remember who said that, but what I do remember is what it means. It means that, as I said, models are mainly representations, simplification of your business reality. You need to find, there is a sweet spot between taking information and then being happy about the answers that your model is giving, and not over-complexifying your model, because the accuracy gains that you will have are not so much related to how complex your system can come. So take that into account. Third insight is to design a strong data collection process. And why? Because of that. Because as soon as you start getting data into your system, you will see that you will find yourself with huge amount of parameters, huge amount of variables, different units, different currencies if you are a global company, like Bekaert, for example. And then you need to find a way to have periodic intakes of data and have a system that be able to extract the raw data that might come, for example, with different data formats that might have decimals or not, different units, some duplicate values, missing values as well. All of this you need to treat. So raw data becomes clean data, a set of standard and clean data that then you can store in an energy data warehouse, SQL database, the cloud, a flash drive. Don't do that. So you need to create a streamlined process that's able to make that each time you have clean set of data. This is a very common one. It's extract, transform, and load. It's ETL process. Maybe some of you know that process, but it can be ELT, for example. Some organizations, they like to preserve the raw data and then have a historical of steps on how they transform it. What I want to say with this is that every data collection process is specific to each organization, so you have to find your way and have a system that works for you. Then, effective communication, because data, the raw value, the raw number, has no value, has no meaning. The meaning of data are the insights that we can take from that, and to go from data to insights, we need to pass a good way to pass through visualization. So here you have to use the correct tool. You have to know which data are you working for. If, for example, you are working with site consumption meter data, you might know that this is time series data. And that time series data, the best visualization for that might be a line chart. So if you plot a line chart on your site consumption meter data, you might be able to spot some trends. And then you might get insight like, hey, you know what? The consumption has increased since February in that site or in that production line. If you are having a huge file with all your sites and the energy costs related to it, you might think, okay, this is categorical data, so I might use a bar chart. And when you put one site next to another, you say, you know, our German site is the most expensive. So you need to have a clear understanding and the correct tools to visualize your data. Also, on effective communication, you have to know who is your audience, and here I come to the first example. Is my CEO asking me for data? It's not the same data that I will provide that if it was my sustainability manager or a local plant buyer. I'm not going to provide the same information, and I'm not going to provide the same amount or the same level of detail. So this needs to be taken into account. And last one, maybe on effective communication, is to add some context. You have to add some context from that first part. You understood the context of your company, so you need to add. If you added some new production line in the month of January, this might explain the sudden increase in your plant consumption. So why not to add a small arrow to it, a small note? That will help people understand much better the data that you are showing to them. And my last intake of today, it will be on data governance, which is basically all the actions and all the policies that you put in place to make sure that your data is used responsibly in your organization. And that touches a lot of things, but I think the most important for me is first to assign ownership, meaning that you have to have data roles inside your organizations. Data roles such as data owners, data stewards. These are the people that are responsible for the data. If you don't have that in your organization, you could not have an effective data management system. Also, you have to make it available. You have to provide the means in your company so people can play with the data. You have to provide data to them because you might foster with that, you might foster an innovation and creativity environment in your organization. And you might get new insights, new reports, because more people, more ideas. Third one, maybe I'm being obvious with this, but of course, you have to make sure that your data is used and stored in a safe space and that you comply with all the concerning regulations regarding data privacy. This is a say. Ensure quality, you have to put in place periodic quality assurance process to make sure that each day that you're ingesting data, you are ingesting the data that you are seeing, if you understand me. And last one, often misregarded, is document your data processes. This is something that we maybe leave for the end and that we maybe don't do, but it's quite important and has many advantages, both internally and externally. Internally, it might help, of course, with the troubleshooting, with onboarding some new colleagues, but external, for example, it might help because when there is an audit, when there is a certification, you don't want to be running around searching for the information while you have your auditors on the building. So this is quite important to take away. So to wrap up, energy transition, again, means complexity, a lot of complexity in energy data management. But if we understand the context of our system, if we have a good data model, also if we establish a solid data collection process, if we communicate effectively the information and we govern it responsibly, we might have an energy data management system that helps you take better decisions and that helps answering questions such as, how exposed are we? And to finish with, I don't know if you know this small symbol here, but it means continuous improvement. Believe it or not, your energy data management system is a living thing. It means that it needs to adapt to the fast-changing context of the energy transition. And for that, you need to monitor your processes. You need to be able to take lessons from your results and from your outputs and be able to integrate those lessons back into your system because you will make it stronger, more resilient, and you will make your system be a much more clear reflection of your business reality. Thank you so much.